We are ready to start.
Great, thank you. Good evening and welcome to the City of Norwalk Common Council Finance and Claims Committee special meeting for today, Thursday, February 22nd, 2024, beginning at 6:31 p.m. The agenda was sent out electronically, and I'll move to the second item, which is the roll call. Councilmember Jim Freya.
Here.
Councilmember Johan Lopez.
Present.
Councilmember Melissa Murray.
Here.
Councilmember Doug Sutton.
Present.
Councilmember Heather Dunn.
Here.
And Councilmember Greg Burnett. We have a quorum for tonight's meeting. So the next item on the agenda is public participation. If anyone has dialed in that wishes to speak, please raise your hand electronically, and we will add you as a panelist and provide you with 3 minutes to share any comments related to the recommended operating budget.
We have one hand that's up, Mr. Brian Meek. I will add him as a panelist.
Okay.
Mr. Meek, you could unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Brian.
Thank you. This is Brian Meek, 11 Cranberry Woods Road in Norwalk. And I'm commenting tonight on the line item about debt service in our budget, a little north of $42 million. That is over 50% increase from just 4 years ago. There's not many other details in this budget. I haven't seen a detailed budget published or discussed other than the high-level slides. That's fine. I'm sure you need time on that. But it's very concerning to me the rate of which we're going on our balance sheet, especially with interest rates maybe even going up. And, you know, look, the elephant in the room is the free Norwalk High project. And not to look a gift horse in the mouth, but I have never once seen any conversation or detailed analysis on the cost of capital this will burden Norwalk with over time, a 5-year project. Some back of the envelope math, I'm showing this is going to cost us $20 million easily in debt service interest that we never get back. And, you know, while not discussing the merits of the project, but we really need to look at the growth of this on the news of California running a $73 billion budget deficit. You know, that's coming to Connecticut eventually, and it's going to roll down to us. And this project day by day looks more unaffordable and not free, not 80%. The state withholds money. We won't get paid back for 5 years plus the audit. And we're holding those notes the whole entire time. I would implore you to put the brakes on this project just for 1 year. You know, go forward with the South Norwalk School and see where the chips land. But we are on the precipice of going into a debt hole on top of, you know, the issues with the revaluation necessarily shifting a lot of tax liability to homeowners with commercial office space tanking. You know, we just need to be very careful here. I'm sure you'll do the right thing, and I wish you well with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Anyone else wishes to speak during public participation, please raise your hand electronically and we'll add you as a panelist to speak. Okay, I do not see any additional hands raised at this time, so I will, and we did not receive any emails related to tonight's special meeting, so I will close public participation and we will move forward to item 4, which is the fiscal year 2024-2025 recommended operating budget and cap review discussion and recommendation to the Common Council. And we'll begin this discussion with a presentation from our budget director, Tom Ellis.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm going to jump right into the presentation and share my screen here. Can everyone see that clearly?
Yep.
Okay. So you saw a variation of this last week, and why we're here tonight, as Greg mentioned, was to set the cap. After the three presentations were done last week, we received the final grand list numbers on Friday, which then enabled us to trickle that into our model and come up with the impact or the anticipated impact to the mill rates and median tax bills for each of the districts. So without further ado, we come to the calendar. And again, just a reminder, the reason why we're here for a special meeting tonight is because this right here on the 27th, the Common Council needs to set the final budget cap. So as with most procedural events, comes to the finance and claims first, and then we move on there. So here is the recommended operating budget. Recall the presentation last week, and that is this column right here, presented recommended fiscal 25, which you'll recall was 4.5%. There was equity, 4.5% on the city side, 4.5% on the Board of Education side. Since we received those grand list numbers, we went back and scrubbed all of the operating budget anywhere and everywhere we could. We sought out any further revenue opportunity gains that we could get. So we've now brought that down to 4% on the city. Again, the highlighted numbers are the revisions we made since the last presentation. So 4% on the city. We took the Board of Education down a corresponding amount to 4%. So an overall amount of 4%. So you can see the differences between last week and this week by division. Again, we trimmed where possible. Not everybody was able to. And we do have one slight anomaly here on the economic and community development. The reason for that is last week, we did not have a transfer item from the Department of Public Works. They used to have signage and marking, and the decision was made to transfer that effort to economic and community development, but it wasn't made, and we didn't make it into the recommended part. So that's why you see a slight increase there. I'm going to be showing you a lot of numbers tonight, so I'm going to ask at the end of each slide if there are any questions, and I realize this is a lot to digest. So before moving on, any questions or anything jump out at anyone?
Yeah. So,
Councilmember Jim Freyer.
So Tom, that didn't come out of Public Works. It was just a number that was not included in ECD then?
Correct. It should have been an up-down. We just got the down. So I had to include the up this side. So
So the first one didn't have it on either side.
No, I had the down on the operation side. It did not have the increase on the.
Oh, okay. I got you.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it was just an oversight. And again, just on the contingency side, the massive increase there is a result of the set aside for upcoming labor negotiations.
All right.
This is Greg. I see a decrease in the employee benefit line item from what was originally presented. Maybe you can touch on that.
Sure. So we were looking at the health benefits with our risk manager, Craig Schmidt, and he had some actuals up to yesterday reflected in his model. We are having a very strong year in both health benefits and workman's comp. And based on his projections, we felt that we could trim another 500,000 out of next year's allocation.
That's good.
Great, thank you.
Welcome.
And Tom, I see community service went up slightly. And I think let's see.
Down about 400.
Down about 400.
Yes.
Okay, what were you attributing to that?
Lamond had several cuts in grants. There was one area that I believe he removed, and then there was another that we gave, on average, I believe, 400 grand a year. But the idea when they started that agreement with this particular receiver, was that they would start with a certain amount of funding and then sort of wean them off, over the years as they got up to speed and they could run it on their own. So this was step one in the weaning process, if you will.
Gotcha, thank you.
Just,
Tom?
hold
Sorry.
on, just to let the record show that, Councilmember Dewan Wiggins, who's on the Finance Committee, has joined the meeting. Councilmember Jim Freya, you have a question?
Yeah, Tom, again, it looks like we may have information that we've just heard that we may have a couple of openings. Have we taken those, that's personnel openings in various departments? Have we taken those into consideration, given the fact that it might be hard to replace somebody, in the beginning of the year? So we have a full salary in for those people that have left in the last 2 weeks.
I believe I know what you're referring to. And what we traditionally do is include it as a full amount for the whole year. It's very difficult to predict, based on the position, how easy it is to fill or not fill.
Yeah.
For example, it's been quite some time we've been looking for a tax assessor. Close to a year. So to be conservative, we leave that entire amount in there. I'll give you another example. On the fire department side, they have 8 vacancies right now. And I approached Chief Gatto to explore options on what we could do here. And he was hesitant, very hesitant to give up any of those spots, because it's very similar to the police academy, the fire academy. When they have openings, you have to be able to jump on it. And if you miss that opportunity and you don't have approvals or the funding, then you're waiting another 6 months. So I told him we may come back to him, but not just yet.
But did he have an offset on but then he also probably gave us a lower overtime number.
Yeah, he trimmed back his overtime already this year.
Okay.
So yeah, and unlike the police department, the fire department has mandatory minimum staffing levels. So he's somewhat handcuffed in what he's allowed to do. So
But usually in the past, they would have they'd have like 4 vacancies that they wouldn't fill, but they manned it with overtime. But now that he's got people that he's authorized to hire 8 people, he shouldn't have the equivalent overtime that he would have had if he didn't have it.
correct. And if I'm not mistaken,
It's a balancing act.
and if I'm not mistaken, they did just have the entrance exam. So he's optimistic that he'll have some solid candidates coming down the road, which would make those 8 open positions even more critical.
Okay.
Good on this slide?
Hold on, Councilmember, Johan Lopez.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Tom. Just a quick question on the macro level. Without knowing the specifics or the rationale behind each department's budgetary request, how did the departments really balance out the competing requests with this new proposed budget, just on a general level?
Not easily. I will tell you, Johan, that there were some areas we went back to 3 times and asked them to scrub. It's quite conceivable I'm the least popular person in City Hall right now. But everybody's been a team player. They understand the challenges that we're under, and they've been very cooperative. And sometimes it's just, several of us sitting in the room, including the mayor and Tom Livingston and the division chiefs, and going line by line and just saying, hey, you have 60 grand in here. Can you live with 40? I mean, we've gotten down to that level of detail. And Jim Freya can appreciate this. I don't know what more the BET is going to be able to scrub when we start doing those meetings in March. Because this is, it's as lean as I think it can be. But yeah, some of those conversations were very difficult, but everybody, as I said, everybody was very cooperative and they're professional, and nobody takes it personally. We have a goal and objective and to get to, and they've all done a great job trying to help us get there.
Thanks, Tom. And just a quick follow-up. Were there any significant trade-offs that you can give us a little bit insight about?
Nothing really jumps out. One of the things that we did, I didn't do the presentation last Thursday, so I'm not sure if this was mentioned, Johan, but the mayor had indicated at the beginning of the budget process, he didn't want to see any new hires. When we got the initial request, there were 19 new hire requests across citywide. So that was the first thing that we cut, no new hires. So in the absence of that, there's not a whole lot that people can really beg for. But I'll give you an example in Public Works. And don't quote me on the exact numbers here, but I believe they had $350,000 in there for salt. They need the salt for the roads every winter. And up until the last week or so, we were having a pretty mild and pretty amenable winter season. So they were stocked full of salt and figured, okay, it's not going to be so bad. We're almost done through the season. We won't need as much as last year. So we knocked that down, I believe, about $100,000. So meeting with Vanessa yesterday after the 2 storms, she goes, I may need some of that back. So those are the types of give and takes that we went through, which I said, as I said, it's, can you live without this? And the mayor's emphasis has consistently been needs versus wants. And, we try to emphasize that as best we can. And I think we are at the level of just needs. I don't think there's any fluff in here.
Got it. Thanks a lot, Tom. I appreciate it.
Councilmember Melissa Murray.
Hi, Tom. I know during the Board of Education joint finance meeting, I had asked you about how grants was working, and you said it was working really well. And you just said that we don't want to hire any more people, but I want to check back again. Grants is usually one of those positions that pays for themselves and then some. And it's going to be a tougher year. ARPA funds running out. There's going to be less grants. They're going to be working harder for the dollar. I just wanted to check in. Is there still any thought of an additional grant person, and what your thoughts about that are?
It's it's been out there. We didn't include a full-time grants administrator in the recommended, nor was it in the request. I recognize the fact that it was a pretty important efficiency study recommendation several years back. But no, we really didn't discuss it a tremendous amount. I think, what I mentioned last time is each of the divisions that have a lot of grants, for example, Vanessa in Public Works has some pretty strong grant writers. But I think it's a viable opportunity at some point. But if we start going to this, we can add this one head count. Now we set precedent. And I've got all the other division chiefs upset with me. It's like, what about my guys? And why is that one more important than this one? And I think for right now, given the circumstances, we're holding the line. The one option I can tell you is each year in September, we do what's called a rollover process. So any surplus funds from the previous year, the division can put in request to, let's say you're under $50,000 in salaries. The division can come to us and say, we would like to roll over that 50,000 into the current budget year and perhaps use that for adding a head. Which is fairly unusual in that we normally only approve heads at the beginning of each fiscal year. It's not normally a mid-year thing.
Thank you.
And
Councilmember Jim Freya.
Tom, another one. These are all net numbers of any revenue that we brought in. In the past, we've been really very conservative, and we've also I'm thinking the buildings department, for example, always exceeds their revenue budget on fees that they've collected. Have we loosened that up at all this year? Have we increased some of the anticipated revenue?
As recently as 7 hours ago, Jim, with Jessica's assistance, we took a hard look. When we were done with her expenditure review, we took a hard look at the revenues, and we spoke extensively of that. I believe we had $3.5 million in revenues in there in the previous round, and we agreed with her approval to up that to 4.2 million.
Good. How about buildings department?
Like Kleppen and those guys, or?
No, I think it said the town clerk. I think he's the one that collects the building.
Rick on conveyance.
Rick McQuaid.
No, we did not. I don't, he was over last year.
It was way over last year.
Yeah, we did not address that particular line item, but it's, I'll make a note to do that.
Well, give it to the BET. I'll have something to do now.
I think they'll still have plenty.
No, but I mean, if you've honestly, what your comment earlier, if you've gone through the way, it sounds very, very much like the reviews we did at the BET in previous years, line by line by line, sitting there grilling department heads. I thought that myself and a few other members of the BET were the most hated people in City Hall at the end of those days.
I think I've got that title right now.
Yeah, but I think it probably wouldn't leave very much left that's in there, other than what I just suggested.
Yeah, I don't anticipate them finding anything that 10 of us for the last 10 days have reviewed endlessly.
Any additional questions on this slide? Councilmember Heather Dunn.
Hi, I just have a question. So like the economic and community development, I'm sorry, I kind of missed it. So you moved signage over there? That's about $500,000?
No. It was, what do we got here? No, so it was, but well, when all was said and done, it was about 150.
So their increase was what before the,
I think it was about 7 point, maybe high sixes, low sevens.
so they were still 7 prior to that?
And part of the reason for that, Heather, is we did something last year. I think Jim referred to this. We approved half-year hires. So if somebody asked for a full head, we said, yes, you have it, but you can't hire until January 1st. So a $100,000 hire became a $50,000 hire, right? So what happened was, now that these are full-time individuals, what you're comparing is a full year salary to a half year salary. So the comparative skews the percentage larger than you would expect. And
That's still in addition to where we were, so.
yeah.
Okay.
So if we were to look at their total revised recommended versus their, I'm sorry, yeah, the revised recommended versus the revised approved, it would be in the high 3s, low 4%. But the way we look at it is, again, you look at this year's versus what was approved last year.
I'm just trying to find out. So and they had requested any new staff, any of those 19 new staffers or any of those?
No, again, part of that discussion 7 hours ago with Jess was she felt that, well, she was grateful for last year's approvals and she feels like she is properly staffed at the moment.
Okay, so she got them last year and we're just seeing it this year.
Yeah, no need for further at this point.
All right, thanks.
Okay, if there's no other questions, we can move on to cover the reval.
All right, so the next page, the summary of the revaluation. Everybody, I'm sure, got their revaluation statistics, what we call field cards, and the increases and such. So what we've got here is by district, the median home value for the 2025 budget versus the 2024 approved, and the difference in dollars, the difference in percentages. So this is just the median value by district growth. So you can see some pretty significant numbers. Lowest is 30, and it goes up to 61%. So just to highlight, this is the first full physical revaluation since 2013. The last revaluation was in 2018. We have to do it by state statute every 5 years. Every 10 years is the physical. What do I mean by physical? Those are the house visits. Those are people asking to come in. Everything that we went through over the past, 7 or 8 months or so. What did that result in? The overall grand list for Norwalk went from 15 billion to 18 billion with a revaluation. The increase is almost entirely due to residential valuations. Commercial was actually down a little bit, but very close to flat. So the increase in the grand list is really on the residential side. And what that did by keeping commercial relatively flat and seeing a significant increase on the residential side is it skewed the mix between the two, and that ends up having a significant impact here. It was 66 residential, 34 commercial last year. Now after the revaluation, 71.5 to 28.5. And this would have been, you know, the skew mix would have been worse without apartments. So what we did was we looked at all the apartments that have been built since 2018, the last revaluation. That totals 333 million in appraised value and 233 million in assessed value. The reason we bring this up is to mention that without those apartments, it would have been even more significant, the change in the mix between commercial and residential.
Tom, where was the majority of the commercial? In what district? Do you know?
I don't know. Paul Gorman, you on?
Yeah, I'm here. Jim, when you say where was the most of the commercial, what do you mean?
Of the 333 million, is there with the majority in, let's say, the third district, which has the highest, or in the second district? Excuse me.
To tell you the truth, I don't know that off the top of my head because I don't have vision open in front of me to be able to like bring up different addresses. I could get you that first thing tomorrow morning to tell you where they are. I mean, one of the bigger projects that came on since 2018, I know, is 123 Water Street. And there's been a lot of commercial apartment activity down in that section. I'm just not 100% clear on which district that is. I don't have that map on in my head.
Okay. It would be interesting just to see that, I mean, you know, if I'm in one of those districts, I'd certainly want to know why my change is 60%, almost 61%. As opposed to
what I can do is for the entire group, I have a spreadsheet of all the apartments that came on since 2012. I could break it down to since 2018, and I could add district to the spreadsheet, and I'll email it to you guys tomorrow.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. I don't think it's not going to change anything, but it would be interesting just to see it.
Yeah, talking point.
Jim, that 333 is just the apartments. It's not all commercial, just apartments. Commercial.
Right. But
Tom,
that's why but there's so much talk about the new apartment buildings and everything, that basically what we're saying is that it really helped us to some extent.
Yes.
But Tom, just to clarify, you had said that the 333, you broke down my spreadsheet to 18.
Yes.
333, because you in the slide it says 2012. I think from 2012 it's 853.
You read my thought bubble. I was just about to highlight that correction. That right there should be 2018, not 2012.
It's another 550 since 2012.
Wow. That's incredible. Now, some of that 333 is still have abatements attached to them?
Yes, like again, because I know it off the top of my head, 123 Water Street, they are in the 4th year of their enterprise zone reduction. So they've gone through their 100%, their 100%. Last year with their 50% year, now they're getting 40% off of the building. And then they'll have 3 more years left before they go to full value. But I only have a total of, oh God, like 12 total accounts that are on some form of the enterprise zone program through Jessica and Sabrina. And a lot of them are getting towards the end of their cycle. We only added 2 new ones. And the only one of significance was 320 Wilson Ave, the new public storage building.
Yeah.
They did year 1 this year.
Okay.
Any
Well-
additional questions related to the grand list? and the reval?
And this is we're not phasing this in and anything. This is just 100%. This is we're
Yeah,
taking
Jim,
the-
if Tom continue, he has some additional
Okay,
slides to
Okay,
talk.
sorry.
Good. All right, so this slide, we wanted to highlight what the impact of the revaluation was, and make it real clear to people, the impact to the tax bills. So what this is what we just saw, sorry. It's the recommended mill rate from last year. I'm sorry, from this year versus last year. So you can see, again, based on the increase in the grand list, that we expected the mill rates to come down, and indeed they did, around 16% across the board for all the districts. So in our model, we ran to highlight the impact of the reval, 0% increase from the city for the city, 0% for the Board of Ed, nothing from the rainy day fund. So what you're seeing is the pure percentage and average tax bill dollars impact due to the revaluation. So if all I did was copy and paste last year's budget to this year, this is what we would have seen. It would have been, anywhere from $900 to nearly $4,000 across the board, and anywhere from 15% to 36%. So when we get to the numbers with the budget, the recommended budget, you'll see that the large component of what's causing this or driving this is the revaluation. Questions? All right. So here's the screen that we just saw up above. And here's where we are right now, the recommended scenario that we have. 4% increase for the Board of Ed and the city, an $8 million draw from the rainy day fund. Personal property mill rate going to 7 right now, or I'm sorry, 27. Right now, it's tied to each district. In other words, if you're a business owner in the 3rd district, you're going to pay the 3rd district mill rate for your personal property. Again, for people who are new to this, personal property is the equipment that each business has. So if you own an auto body shop, it's your forklifts, it's your, all the equipment that you have to run your business. And that is taking the motor vehicle mill rate citywide from 30.46 to 32.46, which is the state statute maximum. The reason we did that is because the grand list for vehicles actually came down from last year. One of the big drivers was the fact that car prices, both new and used, were inflated during the pandemic, when it was very difficult to get cars. And the other factor is, I like to cite the example of the Teslas. The Tesla 3 was valued at $70,000, and Elon came out and cut that price to $35,000. So that had a trickle down effect across all other electric vehicles. But the other thing to note is, in general, across the board, pricing pressure on new and used vehicles has subsided significantly. So by the values coming down on the overall grand list for motor vehicles, we felt that it was acceptable to increase the mill rate by 2 points. So what does all that mean with the budget numbers? Again, up above, the recommended mill rate versus the approved mill rate from last year, it's still down across the board, about 15%. And the median tax bills across the board, you can see it goes anywhere from 10% to 37%. The largest increase is in the 2nd district. So you can see under this scenario, the median tax bill, for example, for the 6th district goes from 18 to 22, or about a 20% increase. The variance in the median tax bill is just to highlight what it would be without the revaluation. In other words, if we use the same grand list from last year to this year, it would have been a pennies a day increase on your median tax bill.
Tom, this is Greg. Can you just go a little further in terms of defining the median tax bill? just want to make sure those that are watching and hear this presentation understand, this does not mean every single household, for example, in the first district in that column is going to get an $1,800 increase to their tax bill.
Correct. Yeah. So median is the midpoint of any data set, right? So if there are 100 data points for a given district, we sort them, we sequence them, we take the 50th one. That's the median. So you're right, Greg. In some cases, some people will see more than this, some people will see less than this. But this is what we calculated on the median because we feel that has the most, broad, impactful representation of what each district can expect. And just to touch on the $8 million draw from the rainy day fund, I had extensive conversations with our bond advisor regarding this. This year, this current fiscal year that we're in, we have a $6 million draw from the rainy day fund. We looked at different scenarios with 8, 10, and $12 million drawdowns. And after running through our model and the bond advisor doing the same thing on his side, he was comfortable with 8 million drawdown. With that not impacting or jeopardizing our AAA bond rating. His words were something to the effect of, it's okay, you have a good explanation for it this year with the revaluation and trying to assist the taxpayers. Don't go higher than 8 and don't make it a habit. That was more or less his feedback.
I hope we're not gonna make it a habit.
The good news, and Jim, I think, is aware of us from his time on the BET. We have a very robust and strong rainy day fund, one of the highest in the state, if not the state. But the bond rating agencies like if you keep it there and you don't touch it too frequently.
But just to comment, this is the exact reason why we have it, because the reval is creating a tremendous impact on the tax base, and the rainy day fund is providing a level of relief, not total relief, but some level of relief as a result of it.
Yeah, that's echoing what our bond advisor said, Greg. He said, yeah, you have a solid explanation for this. This is the type of thing that it's for.
Councilmember Johan Lopez.
Thank you, Chair. Tom, quick question. Are there any strategic financial plans in mind to replenish the fund, whether it's through tax base expansion? Let's say there's something along terms of energy efficient initiatives, paying back debt earlier than scheduled. Anything to that extent, just to kind of a sense of what the plans are to replenish some of that.
Sorry, I missed the very opening part of your question, Johan. I think you asked about grants as relates to this, or was it something else?
No, so my question is in terms of the so are there any financial strategic plans in place or that you guys are considering to replenish some of what's been drawn, whether it's tax-based expansion, whether it's energy efficient initiatives, whether it's expense controls, et cetera?
Right. I missed the part that said plans. I thought you said grants, but I got the rest.
Oh, okay.
But in any case, where the rainy day fund comes from is at the end of the audit, where basically when everything has been reviewed and signed off, it's the difference between what our revenues were and our expenses were. And anytime we have a gain, that balance gets swept into the rainy day fund. So as long as we continue to perform well on our expenditures versus our total budget, that will continue to grow. And we've been fortunate that that growth has been pretty steady over the years. The other initiatives that you talked to, I think might help other components of the city's financial picture, but not specifically the rainy day fund. That's the origin of that.
Perfect. Thanks, Tom.
You're welcome. I know there's a lot of data here to chew on. I'll wait a few more moments if anybody wants to look and see if there's any further discussion on this one.
Councilmember Jim Freya.
So Tom, at one point I thought that, or maybe it was last week, there was some talk possibly of phasing and I know under the law, you can phase in the revaluation. What would have been the effect to phase it in over, let's say, 2 or 3 years?
Yeah, we did look at that, Jim, and we have some recent nearby history. Stanford is actually doing a 2-year right now. We ran various models. We probably have 20 different scenarios out there on our spreadsheet that included 2-year and 4-year phase-ins. In all cases, the first year of the phase-in was worse than what you're seeing right here on this bottom section. And if Paul Gorman is still on the line, perhaps you can articulate the rationale behind that. I think I might stumble a bit on that portion if you can assist.
It seems that that doesn't seem intuitive, but maybe Paul could explain it.
Let me see if he's, I can't tell if he's still on.
Yes, he is on. Paul, are you there? Maybe he stepped away. But as Tom indicated, several different models working with the vendor were run. And this is the best possible scenario that was identified.
So basically, it wasn't feasible to do that.
Correct.
No matter if you went out
Correct.
2 years or 4 years, it probably wouldn't make any difference.
I'm sorry. I just can't recall what the explanation was. It was somebody else was able to articulate it a little bit better.
Well, the only thing I can think of is it just has different. It's different levers that you're pulling and pushing. At the end of the day, it's still going to come out the same number, even if it was 4 years out or 2 years out or whatever. You're just prolonging the agony.
And yeah, then a couple other things. I mean, you can imagine the number of variables that are in play here across the board. So it takes us a while to get to this point, and fortunately, we are able to run various scenarios fairly quickly now. But we weren't a year ago, so we're in a better spot than we were just in terms of the spreadsheet models and how to calculate all this stuff. So the other thing on the phase-in, Jim, not so much tangible what we're seeing here on the screen. It is a pretty decent processing challenge for both the assessor and the tax collector going down the road. So it's it's a fairly heavy lift for them to do a phase-in.
And this also, I'm sorry to keep on asking these questions, Tom, but does this also assume the same tax collection rate that we've been using?
Yeah, we've been using 98.6 all along. Again, that was one of our discussions. We corresponded with Lisa on the option of going higher, and she was pretty firm in her conviction that 98.6 was the right number.
Well, I mean, 98.6, I think the highest you could probably go is 99 anyway, so that probably doesn't make that much difference.
Yeah, and in the end, the amount of incremental collections was, by the time we get down to the average tax bill, it was a couple dollars for each. It wasn't a dramatic shift.
It was a very, very minor impact on changing the numbers.
Yeah. Well, that brings me back to the review that the BET would go through, like we've done in the past. I mean, the BET is going to go through the budgets, and to some extent, as I recall, in previous years, we'd go through the BOE budget as well in some detail. But the numbers that you showed before, with and without with the zero increase in expenses, it didn't seem to be that much of an increase. I mean, you can go through that with a finer tooth comb that you've already gone through, and it would not appear that it's going to move the dial much at all. Yeah. So the entire increase that we're looking at is you can just hang it all on the reval.
I'm comforted that the message we were trying to hit home in this presentation has made it. Not that it's necessarily fantastic news, but yeah, that's what we're trying to emphasize here. This is because of the revaluation. If not for the revaluation, 4% is a marginal increase on the median tax bill and would
Yeah,
be-
it's probably one of the smaller increases that we've seen. If we combine the two, Board of Education in the city, it's probably one of the smaller increases that we've had in maybe the last 5 years or so. I think the lowest I had seen was like about 4.8, I think it was.
Okay.
But this is, I mean, it's a great job. Unfortunately, it's, we're hamstrung by this revaluation.
Yeah. I just got a text. Paul is back. Paul, let me know when you're on.
I'm on.
Okay, so one of the questions that came up that I think you can better articulate than I, we were touching on the scenarios that we ran that included phase-ins, both 2-year and phase-in, 4-year. And we saw that the numbers were worse, or the increases on the median tax bills were even larger than what we are presenting here. Could you try to explain the rationale behind that?
Sure. It's actually pretty simple. It's because with the new budget and so we showed you what it would be for a 0 budget increase, but with the new assessed values. Now all of a sudden you throw in for a phase-in, you throw in that new budget, but you take 3/4 for the first year, you take 3/4 of that increase and get rid of it. So now you're trying to generate the same amount of money from the residential or from all the real estate, but with only 25% of the increase. So the mill rates are going to go way up. They're going to go back to where they almost were last year, just because you have less of a grand list to disperse the 4% increase over. And that's why it didn't work. And the reason, I mean, if you had a more balanced reval, phase-ins can work to a degree. They're not the greatest tool in the world, but they can work if it's a more balanced. But when you have pretty much a $3 billion increase and 99.9% of that increase comes solely from the residential, no matter how you break it down, the residential is bearing the brunt of it.
Got it.
I remember now.
And
Sorry.
And Paul, if I'm correct, a phase-in approach, we have to use 25%. Is that correct?
Correct. By state statute, it's required to at least do 25% the first year.
So bottom line is that the commercial side of it is not picking up their share of it.
I mean, yeah, commercial definitely had a bad last 5 years, and I wasn't here in 2018, but from what I've heard, in 2018, there was a pretty stark shift from residential to commercial. So it's kind of just balanced back out. If I were to compare 13 numbers versus 23 numbers, I would be interested to see what the splits were. Hopefully, as more projects come online with the stuff that Tom was talking about, that Jess was saying that the permit values could be raised by, what was it, Tom? I think $500,000 or $750,000.
Mm-hmm.
With those kind of projects coming online, the commercial base will start to expand and start taking on some more of the burden just from growth. I mean, we're going to have a pretty significant increase just from adding whatever's done with Wegmans by October 1st, because we'll pick up a partial value of what the building is at that point.
So those numbers are not on the list now?
No, because it's based on what was erected as of October 1st. And on October 1st, there was nothing to do with Wegmans. They just started pouring the footings and some pillars like in the last month or two.
Right.
So that'll be picked up for this October 1st.
So I hope they have to pay a lot of permits for those.
As far as I know, yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, they will, and Norwalk High and whatever schools are being constructed will need permits, Jess
But
said,
the city will probably have to pay those permits initially.
yeah,
So we'll have to pay it, take it out of one pocket and put it in the other.
That is true.
Okay, Tom, I believe you have another slide.
yeah, just on to the conclusion. So as we discussed, there's a significant overall increase to median tax bills due to the revaluation and the skew between the commercial and residential mix. And as we were just discussing, we did look at revaluations, and the impact would have been even larger. The recommendation you see here is one of probably 16 different scenarios that we looked at, and that was the least impactful to the average resident / taxpayer. So the next step in this process is to present this to the full council on Tuesday, as I mentioned earlier when we were going over the calendar.
Well, are there any additional questions related to this presentation before we move to the operating budget cap?
Not for me.
Okay, great. So, thank you, Tom, for taking us through that, because definitely this year, the impact of the revaluation has a major impact on the tax base. However, the task before us for the Finance Committee is to come up with a recommended cap in terms of the expenses for the city, and pass this recommendation on to the full council next Tuesday for their review and approval, and then it would go from the council to the BET to have further discussion with each of the departments and go through the line by line review of the operating budget, those departments. As what was indicated, a lot of that work has been done, mainly because of the impact, to determine the impact of the reval and what percentage the city operating side should be at. The Board of Education allocation should be presented with, and to come up with the overall operating budget amount that we can, and I should include the proper amount of drawdown from the fund balance, so that we can to a manageable amount that the city can work with going into July 1st, 2024. So with that, you've seen the presentation and the numbers, so I will read based upon those numbers, the following resolution. Whereas section I-289 of the Norwalk Charter requires that a majority of the Common Council vote to establish a specific spending limit on locally expenditures during the process of establishing the next fiscal year's operating budget. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Common Council of the City of Norwalk that the maximum limit on the total appropriation for the City of Norwalk for fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2024 shall be no more than $440,611,996. This appropriation cap represents total expenditures of $466,591,788, less estimated intergovernmental grants of $26,979,792. Be it further resolved that the result of this vote and resolution be forwarded by the clerk of the City of Norwalk to the Board of Estimate and Taxation. Do I have a motion on this resolution?
So moved.
Councilmember Jim Freya. Are there any questions or further discussion related to the operating budget? Okay, hearing and seeing none, I'll call for, I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Jim Freya,
Aye. In favor.
Councilmember Johan Lopez,
Aye.
Councilmember Melissa Murray,
Aye.
Councilmember Doug Sutton. You're muted, but I see your hand went up. Was that an aye? Doug, you're muted.
We got
Yeah,
it. That's an aye.
thank you. Councilmember Dewan Wiggins,
Aye.
Councilmember Heather Dunn.
No.
Okay, and Councilmember Greg Burnett is a yes, so it passes with 6 in favor and 1 opposed. So now this operating budget cap will be voted on to the Common Council for further discussion and review for next Tuesday, February 27th at the full council meeting. Thank you for that. And at this, we will call a motion to adjourn. Councilmember Melissa Murray, all those in favor? Show by a raise of hand over, it is unanimous. Thank you. Thank you for your participation, great questions, and much more dialogue. But this is the first step in the process to establish the operating budget cap, and we'll go forward from here. Thank you and have a great rest of the evening.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.